Okay. Oh, that's hot. Oh, hot coffee. Hey y'all, Jackie here, and today I'm going to be tackling project number 4 on my UFO pile, a 1940s Playsuit. That's right, I'm going vintage. On another note, this is going to be the last UFO video I put out for a while. I'm in full Halloween mode over here, even though it's September. If you remember in my shift video, I hinted slightly about what I was making. Stick with me to the end, and I'll give you the official announcement. Get excited, y'all. It is going to be epic and sparkly. If you're as excited about spooky season as I am, poke that like button and let me know. Alrighty, let's get back into the 1940s. I bought 2 yards of aqua and 1.5 yards of leaf pattern double cotton gauze back in 2016 with the intention of making a lightweight summer dress. It got shoved into my UFO pile, and when I started this project, I was going to keep that plan. But with one thing and another, I decided it would be smarter to make something 2-piece that would be easier to alter. Enter my obsessive Pinterest habit, and I landed on this super cute pattern from the 1940s for a Playsuit. I've always loved vintage style, though I tend to favor the fit and flare of the 50s and early 60s because it's a flattering look for me. But the 40s have always been somewhere I've wanted to venture. I love the silhouettes, especially the more masculine-inspired lines that we saw starting in the 30s and then exploding during World War II. And I think now these vintage patterns are becoming more and more available to everyone, which is awesome. Before, I was always intimidated because I didn't really understand how these things were made. Originally, I was just going to eyeball the pattern and draft it to myself, but I'm trying to support smaller artists and makers, so I decided to go ahead and buy the paper pattern. Was that the correct decision? I'll let you decide. So, let's talk about this Playsuit. This is the pattern that I got. It's a 3-piece pattern, but I will only be making the skirt, which is here, and what they're calling the bra top, because I hate wearing shorts. The pattern was copied from an actual 1940s pattern that the seller had. So the instructions, procedure, and shape are all exactly what you would have gotten back when it was originally printed. The one thing is that it is only one size, a 1940s size 16 teen, which is a 34-inch bust and a 28-inch waist. That corresponds to what modern day paper patterns would consider somewhere between a 12 and a 14, which is a dress size, I think, probably 12 or 10. So I knew I was going to have to enlarge the patterns to fit me. We'll start with the construction of the skirt. First, I cut out the pattern. Okay, so I have all of the fabric laid out for the skirt. As you can see, I don't have enough fabric. I looked at the pattern and it requires 2 1/8 yard, and I have 2 yards. I also have 48-inch fabric, and this calls for 39-inch fabric. I'm not too worried about it because I held up the pattern to my body and the skirt was like mid-calf, and that's actually not a good length for me. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out all of my fiddly bits over here. This is the tie, so I'm going to cut out the tie, the placket, the skirt band, and the pocket, which is my own pocket piece because of course it didn't come with a pocket. And then with whatever I have left over, I'm going to divide it in half, take that measurement, and then shorten and lengthen the pattern to match that measurement. As far as making this fit me, my plan, it's a pretty simple skirt pattern. I was originally going to slash and spread it and do a mock-up and whatever, but this is such, I mean, it's going to be 4 rectangles. This is the length of the waistband, and I need need more than that. There's plenty of fabric here for me to just cut that strip and adjust it to fit my waist. And then from there, I'll just gather the skirt to fit that as well. I do have this extra fabric up here, and so what I think I'm gonna do is just cut it to width. Since I'm living in like medieval world right now where we use all of our fabric and this is a stash busting project anyway, I'd rather not have much of this left over, so I don't mind a fuller skirt, and I'm thinking with this extra width it'll make up for the extra width on my body and it'll be nice and proportionate. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this all pinned, cut out the ties, the placket, the waistband, and all that shit, and then we'll see where we're at with the skirt, and however long it is how long it's gonna be, and you know, I'm okay with that. I pinned all my pieces onto the fabric and went ahead and cut them out. I was hoping to preserve the crinkles in the fabric by not ironing it, but that was a huge mistake. One you'll see come back to bite me in the butt later on in the video. Then I folded the remainder of the fabric in half, measured, and adjusted my pattern. Okay, I just cut out my fabric for the skirt, and I just want to show you here. So I ended up taking about 4 inches total off the bottom, right at the cut here line, and I just folded that under so it's still, you can't see it because it's still pinned. See, there's the flap of the pattern so that I didn't want to destroy it completely in case I want to make this again. So there's the back with the placket that I had to cut out in the back. This one is going to be a little bit less wide, if you can see, but that's okay. That's fine. I'd rather it be a little less wide in the back. And ooh, I'm sticking to it. That is all the fabric I have left over. That's it. Literally. Like, I cannot even begin to describe how satisfying this is, that I'm not going to be throwing away a bunch of weird fabric. I mean, we'll see. I may have to take in the sides of the skirt with that much fabric that I added. It might be too much, but I'm thinking I'm just gonna leave it because it's really lightweight. And yeah, wow. I am really excited. The top is not gonna be so economical. Okay, so it was about here that I started to run into serious issues with this pattern. All right, I just put my skirt pieces on my ironing board to pin together and realized that I have made a huge mistake. And that is that on the instructions, where is it? On the cutting instructions, it says, can you see? Here's number 10, the front, center front fold. Okay, center front fold. Here is my front skirt pattern. Do you see anywhere where it says cut on the fold? I don't see anywhere where it said cut on the fold. Guess what I didn't do? I didn't cut it on the fold. So, you know, maybe that wasn't on the original pattern. Maybe they just assumed you would look at the cutting design. But that is a huge flaw in this pattern. And let me tell you something. This pattern was not cheap. For what I paid for it, there should have been a note that said cut on the fold on the pattern piece, like normal pattern pieces. So now I am going to have a seam in the front of my skirt. Yeah. Unless I turn everything sideways. But then if I do that, then my pockets are going to be weird. So I'm just going to live with the skirt center front seam, whatever. It's not that big of a deal, but it just annoys me because I paid money for this and it is missing stuff. So, oh well. All right. So that's my little hissy fit for now. After I was over my hissy fit, I went ahead and pinned the pockets to the side front and back and stitched them to the seam allowance. Okay. So I have sewn on my pockets, all right, to the sides of my front. This is my front. I've also done it to the back. And then I have gone ahead and pressed it so that The seam allowance is facing the inside of the pocket, okay? That's important. Don't press it this way. Press it this way. Now what we're gonna do is something called understitching, and we're gonna do this on the front, and basically we're gonna make one more small stitch, one small line against the edge of the pocket, very, very close to this edge here. And what that'll do is it'll keep it laying flat when we put this all together, okay? So that's why we press the seam allowance to the inside of the pocket, because what it's going to do is this stitch that we're going to make is going to capture that seam allowance and keep it nice and tight and tucked into the pocket so that it doesn't show up over here. I did this to all 4 sides of the skirt. Then I pinned the sides together and went ahead and sewed them together. I also sewed the center front seam and the center back seam up to the placket seam allowance. Once all the seams were done, I needed to figure out the placket, and I was really struggling with this for some reason. These instructions are not very thorough, I have to admit. Back stitch to front at side seams. Press seams open. That's the construction of the skirt. The rest of it is just how to put the placket in, and I've never put a placket in before. I think maybe I've done one placket in my life. That's gonna be fun because this is talking about dots and stuff, and I don't know if I put all those dots on there. Oh well, we'll figure it out. Time for the plackets. Okay, so the first thing I have to do, okay, these are the placket facings. Here's the skirt back. Okay, so I stitch here, bloop, and then I clip it, press this open. This edge and these edges I have to finish upward, which actually I don't think I have to do because I serged them, because it's gonna go to the inside. You know what, I better just do it anyway, or I'm gonna confuse the hell out of myself. Okay. After sewing the seam, I clipped into the corner, which will help create a nice edge. Then I pressed it open. And then this and this gets finished. So I'm just going to 5/8 of an inch-ish here. I turned over the outer edges twice and ironed them down. I also did this for the bottom. Stitch time. We are now stitched. Okay, now that was the easy bit. Now I gotta figure out how the hell this goes on this. Here's my center back. So, right sides together, baste and stitch. Okay, so I'm thinking like this, right? So that's the right side. So here, kind of like a zipper. Like if you're doing an invisible zipper, that's what this feels like. Okay, so then I guess we just do that. And then that goes in, and then it'll get turned in. It just seems so simple. Like I couldn't wrap my mind around it, and then all of a sudden it's like really easy. So there's 2 things. Either that means that I was overthinking it, or I'm doing it wrong. We'll see in a minute which one it is. Okay, so I've just basted it to see. Now what I'm thinking is gonna happen, this is gonna get turned to the inside, and then this will get pressed. Yeah. I guess that's all. I guess it's just a reinforcement. Now I do need to do a little fixie-roo here, because I didn't quite get my edges even. But I think that's it. I think it's really not as weird as I thought it was. All right, let's finalize it. I ironed my seams and clipped my threads. So here's the front. All right. I did a little top stitch at the bottom here so that it'll close, it'll lap over, because we're gonna put a button here. Can't see that. Okay, let's try that again. Here, we're gonna put a button here, I think. once the waistband is installed. Now I was supposed to baste these together, but I was also supposed to gather the top first, and I haven't done that because I'm going to do the waistband a little bit differently than theirs because I haven't measured it yet. Okay. All right, now the waistband. To prepare the waistband, I marked all my placement dots on the fabric on both ends. Then I marked center front and center back. Then I folded it in half and gave it a good iron. Following the pattern's instructions, I sewed the edges of the waistband, making sure right sides were together, then clipped the corners and turned the whole thing right side out and repressed it. Then I gathered the top edge of the skirt using 2 sets of long running stitches spaced 1/4 inch apart. Then I matched the centers and side seams to the corresponding marks on the waistband, adjusted the gathers to fit, and pinned it to the underside of the waistband right sides together. Whenever I'm sewing something this fluffy, I like to run a quick basting stitch along the waistband to make sure I don't mess it up. Then, once I'm sure I haven't accidentally caught anything I shouldn't have, I'll go back and do the full stitching. I then flipped the waistband up and ironed the seam allowance toward the fold of the waistband. Then, on the outside, I top stitched the waistband very close to the original seam. I turned the waistband right side out and gave it another good press. Then I turned up the seam allowances on the inside of the skirt, pressed again and pinned. I then whip stitched the waistband down by hand. Okay, so I wasn't able to find 4 buttons that matched, but I was able to find 2 buttons that kind of matched and 2 buttons that do match, and they are the same colorway. I didn't want to have to go out and buy buttons, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these 2 for the waistband and the band of the bra top, and then I'll use these 2 to close the skirt placket. I marked the buttonholes, 2 for the closure and 1 for the waistband. I didn't plan to hand sew these buttonholes, but I spent a half an hour doing test buttonholes with my automatic buttonhole foot and got so frustrated that I pulled a typical Jackie and pitched a fit and just decided to hand sew it. And really it wasn't that bad. I mean, there were only 3 and I'll only have to do 1 on the top. The problem was that this material is so flimsy that it kept getting stuck in the feed dogs. Actually, let's be honest here, I've never had success with that automatic buttonhole foot. It's always a pain in the butt, so it is what it is. I sewed on the buttons. This button doesn't match these buttons, but this one will be covered by the ties. So yeah, that is it. All I've got to do is hem this up, and then the skirt is finished. Oh, and I have to put on the ties. I forgot about that. For the hem, I pressed up 1 inch on the bottom of the skirt, then folded it under again. I didn't really need to do it twice since I serged the edges, but Okay, I'm sorry you can hear my dishwasher, but I just need to show you this, and I don't have time to stop it because I want to get this done. Here is the back tie. Okay, we have the nice pointed oval end here, and then we have on this side this like little pointy bit. And then it says, stitch sections as shown, leaving an opening, trim seams, blah blah blah, open base and press, stitch narrow pointed end to band at small perforations, laying in a pleat. Okay, great. Here is my tie end. Do you see anything different between these 2 ends? I sure don't. I don't see that at all. I also don't see a pleat marked. Here we go again with there being a mistake in the pattern. And was this a mistake in the original pattern? You know, I'm not so sure it was. Because if you look, let's see if I can get this in. Okay, here are the number 13 tie ends, and you can see in this little drawing that the 2 ends are different. And yet this end is the same. So I am going to draw a little pointy bit and hope that it looks good, because it's supposed to match the pointy bit on the top, the bra top. I pinned all the pieces together and very haphazardly drew an approximation of what I thought the point might look like onto one of the ends, without actually looking or making any effort to get it to match. Then I cut the sides, redrew, and snipped the edges. I then sewed each tie together to its lining, making sure to leave about an inch in the middle of each tie so I could flip it right side out. Notice I'm not making much of an effort here to create a straight line. Big mistake. Then I trimmed the seams, clipped the curves, turned them right side in, and iron them down. I'm going to take this moment during this gratuitous snipping footage to say that sewing grumpy is like trying to go to bed angry. Don't do it. I really should have stopped there and done something else for a while, but I did not. I wanted to get this done, and consequently... Wow, that looks like shit. Yeah, you think? Okay, I went back and fixed this tie. I gave it a little bit more of a point on that end and rounded it off a little bit. It looks better. It doesn't look good, but it is what it is, and let's see what the other one looks like. I also went back and redid this because I was afraid it was going to be as bad as the other one. Oh yeah, this one looks a lot better. It still doesn't look good, but it definitely is not as embarrassing as the other one. Because the pattern didn't give me any direction, I fiddled around with the tie pleat until I had something that didn't look like unmentionables, and then sewed it down to the waistband. And with that, the skirt was finished. Now, onto the bra top. This fit me surprisingly well with little modifications. All I had to do were a few extensions on the front and back to get it to fit. First, I cut out a toile or mock-up with a large seam allowance and machine basted it together. Then I tried it on and ripped and pinned until I got it to look like what I wanted. Okay, so after some noodling around, I have updated my patterns. This is my back piece. Originally I was gonna slash and spread it from here, and it didn't look right, so I taped that back up. This is why I wanted to have a digital copy so that I didn't have to ruin the original pattern, but whatever. And so I've added a little bit of extension on the back here. I also had to modify the underarms slightly because, again, my bra was showing, so I kind of like sewed just a little bit of fabric to the end of it, and I cut it to look right, and then I just cut it in half. So I have to make sure I add some seam allowance. So this, I actually cut the seam allowance off, so this is the edge. So I'm gonna start from where the seam allowance is, which should give me my seam allowance. So it's just this weird, awkward triangle. I'll show you in a second what the other side looks like. And then that's your seam allowance here. So we're accounting for the seam allowance on this side already. There we go. Okay, so that is the bodice back. And then here is the band front. I added just a ½ an inch on this, so that'll add a full inch just so the sides didn't quite meet up with my center. So that's just there. And then I did add 2 inches to the band back. When I tried the mock-up on today, which is like 2 weeks later from the original mock-up that I did, this was actually too long by exactly 2 inches. I don't know if I've actually lost 2 inches in my underbust measurement in the past 2 weeks or if I just miscalculated, but I would rather have more than less, so if it looks funny I can always adjust it. And here is the bodice front. As you can see, there's this weird little shape here. This is to cover my bra. It does look a little funny here, but remember that we're gonna lose, you know, ½ an inch of it, and so that'll line up. Whoops, that'll line up with this piece somehow, like that. Comme ça, and that will hide my bra. That looks a little weird. No, there we go. It's gonna kind of look like that. My
like I said, if it looks a little funny, it's under my arms and nobody will see it. So it looked right, it looked good when it was all put together in the mock-up. So that's all that matters.
I pinned the pieces to the fabric and set about getting them cut. To assemble the bodice, first I pinned and sewed the darts on the bodice front and bodice front lining pieces. Then I ironed the darts in towards the center front. Then I sewed the left front to the left back, right front to the right back, and the corresponding lining pieces at the underarm seam. Once the seam was pressed, I pinned the left and right bodice pieces to the corresponding lining pieces, making sure to match centers and side seams. I pinned all the loose edges. Then I sewed those mofos with right sides together, pivoting at the tie corner to make a nice, sharp point. Next, I trimmed the seams. Then I clipped the curves, knocked the camera over with my elbow, and pretended it didn't happen. Then it was time to flip it right side out and press out the seams. I probably should have pressed the seams before I flipped, but hey, I was in a hurry. Okay, so I wanted to show you what I did. I do not have center front markings on my pattern. Is anybody surprised? I'm not. But it was okay. So what I did instead is I put it on and pinned it where I wanted it to be. To make sure that there weren't any gapes or anything. Because I'm fairly large chested, I'm going to add a seam, probably hand sewn, here to lap the center front together so that there's no gaping in the front so I can wear this without exposing myself basically. So I pinned it where I like it. I did the same on the back. I did have a center marking, but because I adjusted this, it wasn't quite right. Oh, actually this is okay. Oh my gosh. After the hand sewing didn't go so well, I ended up machine stitching down the center front lap. The bodice band goes on the same as the waistband for the skirt. I matched the band front to the band back pieces with right sides together, stitched up the sides, then pinned it to the bodice matching centers and side seams, and then sewed it all together. Then I pressed the band down and top stitched a scant distance away from the original seam. Then on the wrong side, I folded the band up, ironed it, then folded over the seam allowance and pinned it down for sewing. Now to pleat the straps. The diagram for this isn't super descriptive, so I might be doing this wrong, but I don't hate the way it turned out. Starting at the outside, I folded the small dots into the big dots. And then on the inside, I sewed through all of the layers. I'm using some waxed linen thread here because it was the closest thing to me. Then all that was left were the final touches. I tied the straps together. Then I added the final button and buttonhole on the back, along with a hook and eye on the other side of the lap for extra security. And there you have it, a 1940s playsuit. Despite all the problems I had with the construction of this pattern, which I have linked in the description below if you'd like to try your hand at it, I'm happy with the way it turned out. It's fun and fresh, and I love that I can wear a little vintage in my everyday life. This is definitely the start of some new fun projects. Like I mentioned in the carbonara skirt video, this double cotton gauze was a pain to work with. It wiggles all over the place and it frays when you sneeze on it and caused serious problems with the buttonhole stitch. It's super comfy and lightweight, but I have zero intention of purchasing this kind of fabric in the future. It feels so good to have another of my UFO projects finished. I have one more that I plan to do maybe later in the fall after Halloween. Otherwise, the rest are going back into my UFO pile for a while. The rest of them are either structured items like pants or things that needed to be taken in before I lost the large amount of weight that I've lost. So they've got to go on hold for a while out of necessity. But get excited because this means I get to venture into the historical costuming much earlier than I originally planned. And the upcoming project for Halloween, a historically inspired, majorly sparkly 15th century Maleficent. Okay. So none of you are surprised. Of course you're not. I mean, I am a Disney villain. That is my inherent nature. I strayed for a single year and did the princess thing. Kind of. The costume is well underway and I can't wait to share it with you. Even if current events mean I won't get to wear it anywhere again. Are any of you already working on your costumes for Halloween? Leave me a comment below and let me know what you're planning, or anything else you've got going on right now. I'd love for you to share. All right, that's about it for me, y'all. I need to get back to my coffee. It is calling my name and I need to get this lipstick off of the back of the cup, which is gross. Thanks for spending time with me, and I hope to see y'all again real soon. If you'd like to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. All right, y'all, I'm out of here. Peace. Ew. That's what I get for putting my makeup on before I have my coffee. What was I gonna say? Comment below. Below. No, no, no. Yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. Yes, yes, yes. Where did that come from? I don't even know. Singing in the Rain. Go watch it. It's a good movie. Makes you laugh. It feels so good to be bad. No, that's wrong. Let's try that again.